Hello, hello, and welcome back to the Woo Curious podcast. I am your host, Eileen, and I am here today with Sam Kirouac. And I'm so delighted to be speaking with her today. Sam is a Reiki master teacher, intuitive energy therapist, and a guide dedicated to empowering women through multiple woo avenues. Welcome, Sam. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited.
Me too. These conversations that I've been having as I've started to interview people have been like the highlights of my week. So I'm really pleased to be able to have one with you today. And to start off, I always ask my guests, what brought you to this place that you are now? What was your spiritual journey like, and how did you find the work that you're in?
Probably like most people, I think my spiritual journey was up and down and kind of all over the place. I think the biggest thing that led me to where I am today was actually more through personal stress and trauma, where I really lost myself
Mm.
and felt super disconnected. My background, I was a therapist, so I had the skills to really sit and try to kind of come back to myself, but nothing was working. And I put a call out to the universe of like, okay, this isn't working. I need something else. Please show me what I need because I can't and I don't want to stay where I'm at right now. And the universe delivered it in unexpected ways very quickly. I was going for lunch with a friend and she introduced me to another friend who was there, and that friend did Reiki. And I had heard about Reiki and kind of knew a little bit, but I was just really, really intrigued. And I just felt called and booked a Reiki session with her. And that's where everything kind of began.
Amazing. I love that synchronicity. And I'm curious to know, I have two questions actually. The first is you said you put a call out to the universe. And I know right before we hopped on, we were just chatting about how we both came kind of later in life to the more spiritual or woo side of our lives. So I'm curious, did you already have that kind of language? Because I feel like that, even for myself, until I started to dabble in things more woo, a call to the universe was not even something that was in my lexicon.
Mm. I think for me, when I was younger, I had seen things that at the time I thought everyone saw, but clearly they didn't. But then that was kind of shut down and I shifted through life. And in university, I had met another friend who was extremely psychic and kind of reintroduced me again a little bit into the world. So I was kind of familiar, but I still hadn't like fully dived in. I
Mm.
was like, that's really cool. I love what you do. Kind of also scares the hell out of me, but that's cool. And so I kind of had a little bit of like curiosity. And then I kind of had a scary experience happen that I literally shut everything back down. I'm like, nope, we're good. No more of this. I don't want to deal with that world. So I did have that. And I think for me, with the personal stress of everything, I think that was just like almost like my breaking point of like, okay, I just need bigger help. I need, give me the sign. You know how
Mm.
everyone is like, Give me the sign. I'm asking for the sign." So I
Mhm.
was just like, you need to give me the sign. This isn't okay anymore.
Right. Yeah. I think that's a really common factor in so many people's journeys into more spiritual lives is that breaking point, right? The dark night of the soul is the term that's
Yes.
often used. And it sounds like for you, that sign was Reiki. And it is, I think, the most like commonly known version of energy healing that's out there. It's something that when people ask me about what energy healing is, I often default to saying, have you heard of Reiki? And they go, yes. And then I'm like, cool, I think it's kind of like that. But I'm actually really curious to hear you explain what Reiki is in a little more detail because I actually am somewhat ignorant, aside from knowing that it's energy healing that works with the chakras. That's like my kind of basic understanding of it because it's not the form of energy healing that I'm trained in. So yeah, can you share like what is it?
Absolutely. Reiki to me is, well, my lifeline, but it is just this beautiful, gentle energy that comes in. And as you mentioned, through the chakras, we each have, or everyone has the chakras. And as we kind of move through life, we gather stuff and they kind of linger in our energy because everything is made up of energy.
Mhm.
So we go through experiences, good or bad, and they kind of stay with us sometimes. And it builds up. And so what happens is your chakras, they no longer have that beautiful flow and that, coming in through the crown, moving all the way through. There's a little bit of stagnation sometimes. And so what Reiki does is a Reiki practitioner channels Reiki through their hands.
Mhm.
So it's not my energy that I'm using. I'm just a conduit for
Mhm.
Reiki healing. And it comes through, and then Reiki just in this loving, beautiful way helps clear, shift, and move that energy out. And so then you kind of have this beautiful flow. It helps release stuff that we've been holding on to, some of us for a really long time. But what I love about Reiki is it's gentle. Every single person can benefit from it, from children to adults to pregnant women. It works with all other healing modalities, so medical, other forms of woo. It
Mhm.
works with all, it's very complementary and it goes where it is needed. And it never feels, well, when I do it, it never feels abrupt, even when we clear, but it's not a one and done.
Mhm.
It's not like you come for one Reiki session and like, oh, I'm good, everything's great. Like we're human, we have our things and we go through, but it's just this really beautiful way. For me, it's I define it as like coming back to myself, to like my own energy, my intuition, and who I am at my core.
Beautiful. Thank you for that explanation. It makes a lot of sense. It sounds, I mean, at the end of the day, everything is energy. And so I think most of those of us who practice some form of energy healing are working with the same force, whether it's
Mhm.
called Reiki or called something else. And it is that lovely ability to hold that gentle release. For in my own practice, it feels like a reminding the energy body of what it's capable of doing for itself, right? Like that helping ease or helping the body itself to heal rather than being the active healer.
Mhm.
I think there's that specialness there, that reminder of
Yeah.
the wisdom that lives in our own bodies. Like as you said, coming home to yourself. That's a
Yeah.
theme.
We all have that wisdom. We all have that, that connection, that inner knowing. Just
Yeah.
sometimes it just gets clouded.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And for you, with learning Reiki and starting, I imagine, as many people do, you started down the path as just a means of healing for yourself. But how did that bloom into you becoming a Reiki master and teacher?
So I had mentioned I had gone to see that friend to get Reiki from. We've actually become really good friends since then. So I would go for the sessions, and every time I left a Reiki session, I felt more joy. I felt lighter. I felt just this sense of me feeling like myself again, but an even better version of myself. I was calm, but yet excited. So I would leave feeling really good. And I remember after one of the sessions, she looked at me and she's like, you're going to be doing this, right? I'm like, no, I just really like to get it done. It feels amazing. And then eventually I was like, I just kind of had this moment. I'm like, no, I'm going to be doing this because more people need to experience what I'm experiencing because it has changed my life. And I want more people to connect to that. So that's when I started finding Reiki training. And then from there, I've just kind of kept on going.
I love it. It's really speaking to, I think, this shift in our world and culture is this rising tide of women who are coming into the business space, the entrepreneurial space, this growing foundation of women who are truly here to serve because we want to help each other, right? That very, like, it's just there's so much integrity there to be able to have an experience and say, oh my God, that was so great. I need to share it rather
Mhm.
than like the kind of bro side of business that is like, oh my God, that was so great. How do I capitalize on it? Right? The different different
Very
energies
different
there.
mindset. Yes.
Yeah, really different mindset. And I think there are places for both, but it's just so exciting to see this rising feminine energy and this reconnection to women stepping into positions of power in society again, because it's something that we've really lost
Yeah.
despite, the women's movement and all of that. It's been a really masculine version of women trying to reclaim that some of that divine power that
Mhm.
we had once upon a time. If we look way back in the
Yeah.
histories,
It was there.
it was there. And yeah, it's that communal, collective, like rise, sister, rise, right?
Mhm.
Rebecca
Yes.
Campbell, and like that
Yes.
sense of, okay, this was too good not to bring others with me. I love
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. No, that's perfect. Yeah.
Yeah. And I know that you work with the moon a lot. You work with crystals and stuff. So did all of those kind of other woo things start to trickle in as you leaned into the Reiki side of things, or were they there before?
I've always loved crystals, but I don't think I truly appreciated them. And it was actually through Reiki training, because I'm also a crystal Reiki master. So I took training to be that. And it was through there that I found this really amazing appreciation for crystals and their properties and how to use them. And so in my Reiki sessions, I always incorporate crystals. But even in my daily life, I am drawn to crystals. I never leave the house. I always say, like, anytime I have to go in people, I'm wearing my crystals. I have them at my door. I have them everywhere. My kids have them in their bedrooms. Like our house is filled with crystals. And I think from there, because I love learning. I am a huge, I love learning. And as you kind of go into the wooey world a little bit, you find other people and you kind of listen to what they do, and it's like, oh, that sounds really cool. I want to learn more about that.
Hmm.
And you kind of go down all these little rabbit holes, and you kind of, for me anyway, I just certain things just really connected, and working with the moon is one that really did, and crystals, and then the Akashic records. But it is just like this whatever is calling. And that's kind of where I just kind of follow.
I love that. Following the path. It occurred to me as you were speaking about that, that loving learning. Again, it's been a really common theme for the women that I have spoken with. And I have this feeling of those of us on this earth who've kind of reconnected to the more spiritual side of being here. A piece of that is a reconnection to the childlike curiosity and wonder that exists so innately in all little humans, right? There is that desire to learn, to know why, how, all of those pieces. And often we lose that along the way, but it almost feels like this return to a more natural way of being is that love of learning. I find
Yeah,
myself doing the
100%.
same thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like, "Ooh, I wanna learn that, I wanna learn this, I wanna learn it all." And
Yes. And all at the same time.
yes, please, I know, I have one too many courses sitting in my inbox that I'm
Yes.
like, "I will get to, I promise," and it can be really hard to kind of pause and take the time to integrate and decide on one topic to get really good at rather than just kind of
Mhm.
dabbling in a lot of areas, so it's always curious to
Yes.
see where people have landed.
And I
Um,
think too, for me, some of it is the understanding that some of the curiosity and the learning is just for me. It
mm.
has nothing to do with my business or something that I want to offer, but it's just for me because
Mhm.
it speaks to me and I just want to kind of almost like keep it for myself.
Yeah, I love that. I definitely have a few things too that I've been like, well, this isn't directly tied to business. Will it help? Potentially, because
Mhm.
I am a whole human being offering whole human beings
Yeah.
insight and things. But it is important, I think, to, especially for those of us in the entrepreneurial world, and I know that a lot of our listeners are entrepreneurs, it can be so tough to remember that like if you do love that learning, remembering to do the things that are just like for you and fun and frivolous, quote unquote, and
Mhm.
joyful and leaning back into that space and time. I forgot that you were a Akashic Records readers too. I don't know how I forgot that.
Okay. There's so many things.
There's so many things. I keep asking my guests, are you a manifesting generator? Because I feel like everybody's
I am
got
not
something.
actually.
What is
I'm a generator.
your generator? Ooh, I have wistful feelings often when I meet generators and many gens too, of like, what does it feel like to have like you're in a female body, so your energy is going to ebb and flow anyways, but like that more consistent energy source just sounds glorious. And I know it
It
comes with,
can be, yes.
yeah, I know it comes with its own ups and downs. And I don't think
Mhm.
there's any one human design type that's like the OG type by any means, but yeah, it's interesting. I'm a projector, so it's like this been a
Oh,
huge revelation for me. I only learned about human design maybe a year and a half ago, and it's
me
just,
too. Yeah,
yeah, yeah,
there's so
wild.
much.
There's so much. It's like the biggest rabbit. It's a
Yeah.
black hole, not a rabbit hole.
Yeah, no, yeah, I definitely, it's recent for me too, but it just made so much sense.
Yeah, it was like
Yeah.
this. Oh, I get it. It allowed me to kind of stop shaming and blaming myself for a lot
Yep.
of the things I do and the way I show up in the world. It's been,
Yeah,
yeah,
exactly.
yeah. Okay, that's a whole different side rabbit hole that neither of us are experts in. I had
No, you're not.
Christelle, who you know,
Yes.
on the podcast. I interviewed her last week, I think it was. I don't know what order these are airing in, so forgive me, audience, if you're like that wasn't last week. But we talked all about human design, and because she's really an expert in that. But
Yes, she is. She's the one that enlightened me as well. So,
yeah, nice. I really loved chatting with her about it.
yeah.
But I mean, I've had one person on to speak about the Akashic records, but it is an area that is absolutely endlessly fascinating to me. And so I would love to hear a little bit about your experience with them and maybe how you use them like with client work.
Mhm. So I never really thought I was going to go into the Akashic realm. I was really happy with Reiki and it was feeling really good. And again, when the universe sort of speaks and sends you little signs you follow. And for me, it was I had a coworker or a friend, mentor, I guess you'd say. She came to me and she's like, "Were you the one that wants to learn about Akashic records?" I'm like, maybe. Maybe I do. And then she's like, oh, well, the person who's teaching it, there's one spot left. You want to talk to the person. And then from there, I just like, everything just worked. Everything kind of like opened up. And then when I was taking it, it was another one of like, oh, this was what was missing. Like
Mm,
I had this moment of like, I've done this before.
mm,
And for me, I use the records for multiple things. I go into my own records for even just sitting in it for healing because the energy of the Akashic is so high vibrational, it's lovely, it's compassionate. So for me, I go in just to even just to sit and to do some healing. I also use it a lot when I'm writing courses. I will go
mm.
in to my records and just start writing. And some of the time I'm done, I'm like, wow, that's brilliant. Like, thank you. That's
Nice.
amazing that I had that in me. And I just because sometimes when I'm writing, I get stuck in my head and the ego comes in. And so I
Mhm.
will go to my records and do that. And so I do that a lot for myself. And what's I find interesting is when I'm doing readings for clients, the information comes in so different. For them, it's like when I'm reading for a client, the images and what I hear is so clear and giving the messages for whatever is for their highest good. When I go in and ask questions for myself, I'm kind of like, hello, are you here? But then it'll be afterwards, I'll get the downloads because I'm not doing a reading for myself. It is more about just getting the downloads. But I
Yeah,
had this in my head about it would be the exact same way. And it
right.
isn't for me. I mean, maybe other people have it, but for me, it's definitely more of like later I'll get the downloads, or as I'm driving, all of a sudden I'll be like, oh, brilliant. Yes, exactly.
Mhm.
Like, oh, okay. That's really
Mm.
cool.
That's super interesting, and it makes sense because like it is almost like when you go in consciously for yourself, there is still that conscious ego mind on board.
Yeah.
Even if you've taken yourself there, there is still that
Mhm.
piece of you who's doing the conscious, like, this is what I'm asking, and you're wanting an answer in a way that is far more attached than if you're
Yeah.
just going in and being like, I am here to receive guidance for this person. And obviously, you want good things for the person, but the attachment is really
Yeah.
not there. You become that channel rather than, yeah, like, give me answers.
I know,
Like,
I'm like, I'm here. And it's because with clients, whatever the guides show me, I say, because I don't have to make sense of it. It's not
yeah,
for me to make sense of or to hold. So I just give them the information. But as soon as it's about me, I'm like, wait, explain that more. I don't understand, or that doesn't make sense. And then I spin. So
right.
they
Yeah,
found
that
other
makes
ways to make it work for me.
perfect. I love that. It definitely, I think, is on the list of things that I have in my, my wish list of things I would like
Yes.
to learn and add to my practice and do. And I like, go, I want to do all the things. I want to learn all the things. And
I
there's
hear you.
a finite amount of time, but it's really cool to be in this world of woo. I'm curious, were you already partnered with your husband and like had kids when you turned to this side of life?
I did. It was my children were very young when I had that very I call it traumatic because it was very traumatic to me experience. And so
Mhm.
my kids were under 3 when it happened. And so, yeah. And my husband just, he is my number one support. He doesn't always understand everything, but he's always like, way to go, babe. That was awesome. I'm like,
Oh,
thank you. So
oh,
he's
good.
embraced it and he's started like, he would carry crystals because I would just say, just put these crystals in your pocket, please. And he would humor me, put the crystals in. He comes to me sometimes, he's like, I need Reiki. Can you just clear my energy? So he's using
Mm,
that language, even though that is definitely not his area that he lives in. So
yeah,
he's very open. And I know I'm very, very lucky because not everyone has that support at home. So I'm very grateful that
yeah.
he's just so supportive. And my kids love it that like they're attuned to Reiki as well. So they give Reiki to our cats. They have crystals. They do all those things, which I love.
Yeah, it makes sense. They were little enough that for them, this is just a normal way of moving in the world, which is beautiful. And I love that you have that relationship with your husband because, yeah, I'm always curious for those of us who were already partnered when we came to this shift. Because for me, it was massive. Like in the span of 3 years, I went from being pretty much an atheist. Like we could say agnostic. I thought maybe there
Mhm.
was something, but mostly it was like there is science and facts, and that is it. And in the span of a couple of years, really, the biggest shift was happening in the first few months that my partner now and I were dating. He he started dating this really rational scientific midwife, and I still am rational and scientific, but I'm also
Mhm.
a lot of other things now. And I'm a witch instead of a midwife, which is really synonymous. However,
Right?
it is
Yes.
it is a lot to ask somebody to be open, and he's supportive and open as well. He'll always be like laughing at me because I have rocks. He calls them my
Mhm.
rocks, my crystals. Like, oh, you brought a bag of rocks with you to Buenos Aires. I'm like,
Yes, I
I
did.
did. Yes, I did. And he'll kind of jokingly ask me what they're for and roll his eyes a little bit, and it's fine. I never expected him to fully come along for the ride, but it is always interesting to see and how over time, even with that kind of skepticism there, the the small little subtle curiosities and openings start to happen because you're modeling the shift and the transformation that's available, right?
Yeah.
So
And I mean,
it's
he was there with like that when I went through this big change of losing myself. And then this was a thing that brought me back. And I am definitely so much calmer and happier and joyful than I was at that time. So he witnessed
Mhm.
how this really did like change my life.
Yeah, that powerful transformation.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's very cool. I'm always interested to hear the dynamics. I know when I first started really leaning into more of the woo, I think the hardest piece was talking to my family about it because
Yeah.
they'd known me my whole life. And so I just didn't. I just started talking about it on social media instead. I think they have
Yeah.
to
And I
find
understand
everything
that.
out there.
Yes. Yeah. It is
Yeah.
harder when you come from a different like when you start off somewhere else like that, right? Like I was a therapist,
Hmm.
and now, I mean, I still do a little bit of that because it comes up when you're in sessions, but not everyone understands why you're not doing that thing that you used to do.
Yeah, for sure. And why you left like the
Hmm.
good stable career, and especially when it comes to having created a career for yourself out of what you have shifted into and learned, leaving that noble, that's the word I'm looking for. Therapy is a noble career. And I think that Reiki healing and intuitive therapy that you're doing now is just as noble, but for the world at large, often these careers seem less legitimate. I struggled the
Yeah.
same leaving midwifery, but did you have kind of a pushback from friends or family, or was your close network fairly supportive?
My close network was very supportive because I think they also saw
Saw.
the change in me. And like, I mean, I had friends who would see me and they're like, you look happier, like you look different. You just, you look really, really good and light and glowy. I'm like, I am. Like, I'm legitimately really happy. So I think it was easier because they saw that shift.
Hmm.
And there's some that never got on board, and that's okay. I don't have those conversations with them, and
Hmm.
that's fine because for me, it's not about convincing them because some people will never be convinced, and that's okay. That's their journey.
Hmm.
I just don't need to convince anyone because I know for me how much it's changed my life and how much it supports my clients and how it's impacted their lives.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's the biggest piece is, and when you start to think about, coming out of the woo closet, as it were, being being able to have that kind of grounded confidence in yourself and knowing what you know. We often, I found early on, as I started to think about this kind of stuff, I really had a lot of my identity tied up in this rational minded, smart, like, I have a couple of degrees with a 4.0 GPA, and I pegged my
Mhm.
identity on that and my worth on that for so long that it was really shook me for a long time trying to integrate these two pieces of myself and come to terms with the fact that, oh, I did actually believe in spirit guides. Still saying that out loud is like, there's this piece of me that's like, Eileen, have you gone crazy? Have you lost your marbles? Are you mad?
Yeah,
So,
no, it's interesting. And I mean, my husband, he's very wise. He had said for me being able to, he calls it like my human side of the therapy and all that, and then my wooey side.
mhm,
He always says like it's just this way of really combining them and sort of living in the middle of it. And that's sort of where my clients live too. It's that we're in the human world, but there's
mhm,
also that wooey curiosity and just being able to kind of coexist together in this beautiful way.
I think that's what makes so much of these types of healing spaces so powerful is the wooey side coming in and meeting the body.
Yeah.
Because a lot of modalities really focus on our culture at large, really focuses on the like physical, the cerebral in the like not out there kind of cerebral, but the very conscious mind, talk therapy, these kinds of
Mhm.
things. They only get you so far. And so it's a trend that I feel like I'm seeing, and it might just be the algorithm feeding it to me. But I'm seeing a lot of counselors and therapists who are bringing in, somatics or Reiki or
Mhm.
medicine journeys and like all of these
Mhm.
other ways of accessing that intertwining and enmeshing of the spiritual and non-physical part of our energy and that really like earthy physical body that we find ourselves in.
I love that. Well, and it's healing is there's so many different ways to healing, and why not embrace all the different ways to create this very holistic way of going on this journey.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah, it's beautiful. It feels really, God, I'm just so excited. Like I wish I could see what the next kind of 10, 20 years is going to bring. I think there's this sense of a massive shift happening. And I think we're seeing it in so much of the destabilization in the political sphere of the world as
Yeah.
well. And it's polarizing and it's scary. And there's also, as I mentioned, this feeling of like this groundswell of femininity coming up to support and knit us back together and like reconnect with that compassion and love and humanity in all of us.
Yes. Yeah, the compassion piece and the kindness piece, it's just, I'm happy to see the return.
And I think with everything that's going on, we had COVID, now we've got wars everywhere. And it's a
Yeah.
lot of people are living in this space of they were already at the end of their rope and now they're really not coping. And so I think it's so important for healers like you to come and hold this space for those of us who've had the experience of the healing that some of these areas can offer to then stand in and say, okay, I got you. So I
Mhm.
love that you're able to offer this magic to your clients in the world.
Yeah. I always describe it as like sacred work because it is just this beautiful space to be in someone else's healing journey and for them just to be there and to witness the shifts and
Mhm.
them coming back to themselves. It is a beautiful thing. And I love I love it.
Yeah, it is. Sacred is one of my favorite words, I think.
Mhm.
It's because not enough is sacred anymore, and that
Mhm.
re-holying of I get my hands up. And very few people watch the YouTubes, but I tell you, if you want a good entertainment, you should be watching this podcast on YouTube. But it's so it's just yeah, that's all I got. That's all I
Yeah.
got.
No, that sums it up. I love
Yeah.
it.
So for anybody who's listening who is curious about walking part of this sacred journey with you in your magic, what do you have that you're offering for people, or how do people work with you?
Um, Lots of ways. So I do offer Reiki because Reiki is definitely always part of my journey. So I do in-person and distance healing sessions. And I also teach Reiki as well. I'm doing mostly in person, but I'm going to be doing more online later in the year. And I do Akashic Records readings. And I also do for people who live in Calgary. It's called Reiki in the Records. So it is a Reiki session, but it's also while we're in your Akashic Records. It is beautiful. I love it. It is more of an active Reiki session. So people are not falling asleep during this one. We're in the records. So a lot of it is you can ask questions, but then we get more information on maybe some of the energy you're holding into or onto. Some past life stuff comes through. So it is just, they're really cool sessions. I do love them, but I am only doing them in person. And then I teach a lot of different workshops. And in Calgary, again, I hold monthly moon circles where we just kind of women gather, we hold space, we talk about the energy, what's going on, and then we play with oracle cards because I love them and I love sort of facilitating space for women to connect back to their intuition. That's one of my biggest things.
Mm.
Right now, I'm teaching the Intuitive Path program, which is all about reconnecting to your intuition. And then we go into opening up your own records and learning how to work within your own Akashic records.
Oh, cool.
So, yeah, I feel like that sums up most of the ways people work with me.
Amazing. And they can find you on your website and Instagram, correct?
Yes. Instagram, it's Sam Kirouac Soul Healing. And for my website, it's samkirouac.com.
Awesome. And of course, for those of you listening, the links for those will be below so that you are able to get in contact with Sam. If you have any questions for Sam, please go on over to Instagram and shoot her a message or hop on her email list on her website or both, ideally both, and check into how you can work with her. Thank you so, so much for tuning in this week, Woo Crew. It's always a pleasure to have you. I am excited to be back next week, and I don't actually know if I have a guest next week, so I'm not going to tell you that right now. But if you enjoyed this episode, please leave a rating, leave a review if you're listening on Apple Podcasts. It helps so, so very much. I appreciate and love you all. And as always, have a wonderful week, and I'll be dropping back into your ears next week.